The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports. You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, the Michigan State Spartans, they pick up a win in College Park. Well, precisely three more points than Maryland scored. I don't know the final score, to be quite honest. I blacked completely out, and not off alcohol, of course. It was a water-only night here at the Sheehan household, but what did we just watch, Sam? Sam Martin, by the way, friend of the podcast, great basketball mind. What the hell was that? What did we just watch? Oh my God.
I almost think about what that was like for a Maryland fan. That was the all-time like guillotine game for Maryland. You're behind, you can't win. Oh, we're falling. And then we just claw our way back. And at the last second, as the Viper is taunting his opponent, walking around the arena, whoop! Trey Holloman from 55 feet crushes their eyeballs out of their skull.
Right in front of that wall student section, who, by the way, fantastic student section, fantastic crowd. I have nothing bad to say about Maryland, their program, their fans. I don't care for their head coach, obviously, but that's because of a very petty child that remembers what he did with Seton Hall and Miles Powell back in 2019 or 18 or 2012. I don't really remember the year, quite frankly. But look, my big, maybe hot take of the game, maybe I'm just a little too drunk off the green Kool-Aid right now, but hey, you know what? After you win on a half-court buzzer beater on the road, you don't get to say this quite often, but here I go, Sam. Are you ready? Are you sitting down for this one? Feel like, as ugly as it was for Michigan State on the offensive side of the ball, feel like Michigan State deserved to win that game. I mean, they had full control in the second half, of course, save for the little mini meltdown at the end. That wasn't a great time. The offense never really got rolling, but in Michigan State fashion, they played great defense the whole game. They only held Maryland to just, one or two field goals in the last 5 minutes and 15 seconds. I mean, I think MSU, it sounds ridiculous, after a half-court buzzer beater to steal one on the road, I still think that they were the better team here. And this was against a team that a lot said was the best starting five in the Big Ten. You did it in their own barn. Do I need to pump the brakes a little bit and realize that, no, we got pretty damn lucky this game?
Izzo agrees with you. He said in the post-game interview, he said, that was a lucky shot, but don't say we didn't deserve to win that game, because MSU did outplay them for pretty much the entire way. And yeah, it was close. They started to pull away with about 5 minutes left. 5 minutes and 24 seconds was when Jace Richardson hit the shot to put him up 9 points. And that's one where you can look at the post-game win probability chart and see you were at about 91%. And they did play very poorly down the stretch, and they played very poorly at different times during the game on offense. I thought Maryland did a good job with some scheme at the end where MSU started to spam the Jace Richardson high pick and roll, and they went to kind of a 3-2 zone look to take them out of that. What I think MSU can learn from this, and I hope Jace Richardson can learn from this, is that he was giving up the ball and then retreating to the corner, which I'm sure is his normal assignment within the flow of their offense. When you give up the ball at the top, make a cut to the corner, get out of the way, let Holloman cook a little bit. But the way that especially MSU's offense, and really after a great game against Michigan, Holloman for a lot of the game until the end of it did not play very well offensively. Some great defense from him, as is true of really the entire team. They just let Maryland take them out of what was really working. And hopefully that's something that they can learn. He can be a little bit more assertive in those situations in the future, come back up. No, give me the ball. I need to be the person who's making plays, because really he, at the very beginning of the game, when MSU took control right out of the gate, and then when they took control again in the second half, it was Richardson who really, I think at this point, without a doubt, is the clear best offensive player on the team. But this was just a blocking and tackling running the ball, stopping the run, gritty effort by Michigan State. I mean, the offensive rebounds in the game, it was something like 13-4, including some really big ones down the stretch, to take control of the game. And just, you see in that game the way that this construction of Michigan State, playing two centers all the time, crashing the boards really hard on both ends, really getting back to an old school brand of basketball, the way that can still work for you in creating so many extra possessions. I mean, the field goal attempts in the game, Maryland took 48 field goal attempts and 26 free throws. Michigan State took 65 field goal attempts and 12 free throws.
Thank you.
That's the game.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be salty and complain about officiating, especially after we won. I like to think that I'm better than that, so I'm just going to bypass that whole topic right there. I do like what you said about rebounding. It has been the cornerstone of this team the entire season, and you were right. It was 10 offensive rebounds to 4 for Maryland. But I'm sorry, 13 offensive rebounds for Michigan State, 4 for Maryland. 10 second chance points for your Michigan State Spartans, whereas Maryland, they didn't get any second chance points at all. Not in the first half, not in the second half, not in the entire game, Sam. So yeah, that's the calling card for Michigan State. Not only is it good defense, it's great rebounding, and you saw it in spades right there for Michigan State, leading the way on the boards. Jackson Kohler, 8 rebounds, and then 5 for Carson Cooper. You also had 8 from Jace Richardson too. I should have pointed that out. I'm sorry, but here's the question, which is like very difficult to answer. It's like, who gets your MVP for that game? Obviously, Jace, he's your leading scorer, 15 points, 6 of 14 shooting though, so like percentage-wise, not the most efficient, but it's not like anyone else was really that great offensively, except for Trey Holloman when he found his spot from 55 feet away from the hoop, just like he practices it. Who gets your MVP? And if it's obviously Jace, who gets second fiddle for you?
Yeah, I mean, you would have to probably say Jace Richardson, simply because the biggest stretch of the game was when MSU took control in that 7 to 5 minute stretch of the second half. And he was the one guy who was able to get to his own shot. I think that, I can't really give it to one player. It was really such a collective effort by MSU's big men of rim protection. And I thought Maryland's bigs did a great job as well. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of slop in that game, and there was some, bad shot selection, I think, on both sides, but there was also a lot of great defense being played and a lot of really great athletic verticality. I mean, that's the first time I've ever seen Cohen Carr get blocked at the rim. Now, he was a little off balance. He didn't have a full spring. He needs to maybe watch a little Jimmy Butler tape on taking a pump fake in the paint once in a while, but it was just such a physical game. And MSU's bigs, I thought Zapala had a lot of great moments in relatively limited run, both protecting the rim. And he fumbled a couple passes, missed some layups. MSU as a group missed a lot of layups, including Jace Richardson. I think missed a couple ones, and he was off balance for some of those. But it was just, who really was the MVP of the game was Tom Izzo.
Okay.
This was just such an expression of what he wants out of his team, the way that he wants them to play. And the reason that they won, maybe the lucky shot turned the game in the end, turned an overtime game into a victory. So that's 50% of a win. But MSU controlled that game because they played so hard and they played together, and they played great defense and with tremendous effort, as we've seen them do for most of the year. And it's Izzo ball. It's what we've been saying since the beginning of the season. They've brought back the feeling. They're doing it in the way that we love. It's the basketball that means something to us. And I'm very glad that they won the game. And even as ugly as it was, there wasn't a time where I didn't enjoy watching this.
Oh, I will disagree with you there. There were times where I was like, I need to take a bath after this. This is the grimiest hoops I've seen since like circa 2003. This is tough, but hey, I'll tell you what. I don't care how ugly it looks. Anytime you're leaving a road venue in the conference with a victory, bathe me in that, actually. I want more of that slot.
23-21 halftime score had me picturing one Dick Bennett and the old time Wisconsin Badgers. Those first one to 40
callback
wins. I was like, oh man, we really are back in the glory days.
No, it truly felt like, you went back a little further than me. It truly felt like a Bo Ryan, Tom Izzo matchup. Like that first to 50 win, blood all over the court. Quite literally, at some points, Julian Reese had to leave the game with a little blood on his jersey. But it was.
I mean, if you think Tony Bennett's Virginia teams committed crimes against your eyes in basketball, his dad was like the original war criminal. So he created the blueprint of how to offend the senses while playing hoops.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners.
He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. The Oklahoma Sooners made a big-time splash in the offseason by hiring Jim Nagy, the former executive director of the Senior Bowl, to be their new general manager, Jay.
Yeah, John, I have been thinking about it, after your announcement yesterday, and I recorded something over on my channel, Unfair Sports, and as I thought more and more and really let it sink in, there's about 3 things that really jumped out to me on this hire. First and foremost, you just took a guy that is beyond overqualified for this job, and you brought him in to create something new that could potentially cause ripple effects throughout college football. Now, granted, other teams are doing this similar. Michael Lombardi is the GM over there at UNC. Washington just picked up a general manager kind of as a consultant to help Jed Fish. Nebraska just hired the New England Patriots executive, Pat Stewart. So you're seeing this trend happen everywhere. But the Jim Nagy one gets you to number 2, John. He has the deepest Rolodex, I think, of anybody out there in college football. He's built so many relationships to get kids to the Reese's Senior Bowl that you've got a guy that agents know, coaches know, front offices know, NFL offices know. Everybody knows Jim Nagy, and he's built that repertoire. I think it's the last 5 years he's had over 100 kids drafted in the NFL draft, and I think last season was 110 total. So, on a streak, he has been leading the way in not only scouting talent, but getting them to the NFL. So having that deep of a Rolodex, John, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later, but I think that may be probably the biggest thing that we're really overlooking about this hire.
It's a relationship business.
Yes.
As much as what have you done for me lately matters, also who you know matters. And so much of what you end up developing and recruiting and all of that is based and forged out of relationships. And Jim Nagy has done a great job. I remember when I was covering the Dallas Cowboys for Inside the Star, an independent Dallas Cowboys site, all the talk was about the growth of the Senior Bowl, dating back to when he took it over back in 2018. If you've heard the phrase, the draft starts in Mobile, that started with Jim Nagy. He really took the Senior Bowl from being what I think for most part was an afterthought to making it a premier event of the offseason that people wanted to take part in. I think back to, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was a part of the Senior Bowl. He was already projected to be the number 1 overall pick the year that he went into the NFL draft. But when he got to the Senior Bowl, he got an opportunity to work in front of the Cleveland Browns, to meet with the coaching staff, because I think they were the coaching staff for one of the teams that year. And it gave everybody kind of the assurance that who they thought Baker Mayfield was is who he is. And the Senior Bowl provided that. And you've seen a number of guys. You've seen great battles take place at the Senior Bowl over the years. And Jim Nagy has been a big, big part of its growth and its development. And just, again, providing opportunity for a lot of seniors who kind of flew under the radar at times because they get overshadowed by underclassmen because the NFL values the age part of this, that seniors sometimes kind of slide down the draft board. Well, the Senior Bowl gave seniors an opportunity to shine again against tough competition. I remember, you go back even further beyond Jim Nagy as the executive director, the battle between Zach Martin from Notre Dame and Aaron Donald of Pitt. Two future Hall of Famers going at it in one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl. But he took it from, again, a all-star game that was pretty good and made it great. It was a premier event. You talked about the relationships, the years of experience scouting. I mean, 20 plus years as a scout in NFL offices. This is a huge part of it too, because he's going to be able to take what Brent Venables wants, both for his defense and for his offense, what all these assistant coaches want. And he's going to be able to kind of help do that year-round scouting, where these guys might be trying to focus on developing their position group during spring ball, during fall camp, during the season. And Jim Nagy is going to be able to, him and his assistant GMs will be able to continue to do that scouting work for them and be like, hey, I got a guy that I think you're really, really going to like. And they're not having to parse through thousands and thousands and thousands of huddle highlight tapes to try and find that one kid that they want to prioritize. And you get somebody that can take the financial burden off of the coaching staff to try and manage the rev sharing and the NIL approach. And it gives somebody that kind of streamlines all that.
It does. And to even add to that, so his role, he's going to be mainly implementing a new progressive structure, getting college football to that NFL model. So he'll be working with, of course, Jake Rosenberg, who's the consultant, closely with Brent Venables, working closely. He'll build his own staff, assistant GMs, scouts, and all of that. But you made a point about the Cleveland Browns coaching staff being there, helping coach the Senior Bowl when Baker was there and kind of help with, getting him even more recognized and ended up being number one pick. John, he has an inside track on NFL coaches that maybe at some point will be looking for jobs. Think about it this way. If you see success, Texas is seeing it right now, your coaching staff will get poached. You will be losing coaches on a regular basis. And to be honest, I think that to me was a little bit more detrimental to Nick Saban at the end of his career than even like NIL and transfer portal, mainly because he was constantly replacing guys. The minute he lost Kirby Smart, he was constantly having to replace defensive guys as well. And it is very hard to find really good position group guys, even with the relationships he has. Nagy knows everybody. And everybody has his number. Everybody reaches out. Everyone talks to him. That gives you an additional piece of insight. If your coaches end up getting other jobs, you'll have the opportunity to be able to pick, because people will pick up the phone for Jim Nagy just because they know him so well and he's worked so closely with so many people. And then, of course, back to the agent piece, when it comes to looking at prospect and looking at players, they're working closely with the agents. He already knows what prospects make sense to go pursue. Just like you said, instead of wasting your time through tape, you have an idea and talking to some of these agents of, this kid, he's interested in that area, or no, I wouldn't waste your time. He can sniff a lot of that stuff out early and kind of streamline the recruiting and scouting process. So Nagy brings a lot of components that when you really dive into the context, or more so the nuance of what he's done, he really is going to change the game for Oklahoma. And it also provides Oklahoma with the one thing that a lot of people are trying to say, Oklahoma's kind of dead, not too good. 2 losing seasons the last 3 years, first time since 1999 or the 90s, actually. That eliminates the thought that Oklahoma could possibly be dead, because for Jim Nagy to interview for the New York Jets job, rumor has he interviewed for Florida as well. And he picked Oklahoma. Obviously, he doesn't think this place is dead. And obviously, he believes that he can take this team and help propel them to the next level. That's a huge, huge endorsement for Oklahoma and that football program. And honestly, Brent Venables too.
And I think it's a guy that works in alignment with Brent Venables.
Yep.
Because it's a dude that, again, he values those upperclassmen. He values the experience that comes from being a senior and having played so many years. And we see that Brent Venables is able to get guys to stick around. Guys like R. Mason Thomas, who could have jumped to the NFL draft and probably been a top 50, top 75 pick, got him to stick around for one more year. So you got a guy that's going to have similar philosophies in player retention. And I think he's going to have similar philosophies in, position value as well, trying to identify what positions they need to focus their attention on when it comes to the NIL and rev sharing situation that's coming down the road. Big hire. If you're not sure about it, just log on to social media for a little bit, find your favorite NFL analyst, college football analyst, and they're praising the hire for Oklahoma.
Right there.
Yeah, it's everybody. High school, college, NFL, everybody loves Jim Nagy and loves this hire for the Oklahoma Sooners. That shouldn't scare you, but kind of, I know the pessimist out there is going to be like, oh man, if everybody loves it, it must be terrible. But no, this is going to be, I think it's going to be a good thing. Now, all Oklahoma has to do is put a team on the field that's going to go actually win some games.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
A newsy and very insightful Wednesday for Nebraska football.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast.
Nebraska, reportedly from Pete Thamel, hired Patrick Stewart as its general manager. And then this was, of course, confirmed locally by people like Mitch Sherman. There you go. He can confirm. Stewart has been the director of pro personnel for the New England Patriots for the last couple of years. He spent time with the Eagles, and he was with the Panthers when Matt Rule was the head coach in Carolina. So we saw yesterday that Oklahoma hired a general manager, Jim Nagy, from the Senior Bowl. It was sort of lauded around the country as like a really big deal. And Nebraska on the same day hires their general manager as well. Now, one more thing before I let Mitch talk here. Nebraska also already had a general manager, technically, and this will be a little bit different of a general manager, from my understanding.
Yeah, just a bit different. Sorry, you were fine talking. I was looking up Patrick Stewart, the actor who played Captain Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek.
Yes, they did not hire that guy.
Just to be clear, I don't think he's alive. Possibly is. Doesn't matter, because that's not who Nebraska hired. Okay. Nebraska went and he goes by Pat, I believe. That seemed to be the preferred method of referring to Nebraska's new general manager. Longtime NFL front office guy, been with the Eagles. He was with the Patriots for a decade and then came back to the Patriots the last couple of years as the director of pro personnel. Also spent some time, you'll be maybe surprised to know, or not surprised, with the Carolina Panthers and Matt Rule during his stint in the NFL. So yeah, this is a big move. Sean Padden, who has been in the GM role at Nebraska for Rule's first 2 years, is staying, and really he's going to stay in what he's been doing. So Padden has been the primary behind the scenes player for Nebraska as it gets ready for revenue sharing. He's been the main liaison for the football program with 1890, Nebraska's collective. So he can continue he's going to still kind of be he's going to still be very much involved in the money, in the contracts that Nebraska will seemingly be working on with football players as rev share begins. And Matt Rule is very happy with the work that Sean Padden did in kind of heading up Nebraska's efforts to make hay in the transfer portal over the last several months. So they're just beefing up their manpower in this department and then bringing in Pat Stewart to do general manager kind of things. It's like having an NFL general manager. Yeah, instead of having free agency and the draft, you have recruiting and the transfer portal. You have a bigger roster than exists in the NFL. You have cuts like exist in the NFL. So college football is becoming more and more like the NFL, and you see the influence in this offseason, the NFL influence with people like Stewart coming on board, with Phil Snow coming on board, with John Butler being elevated, with Terry Braden coming on board. These are all people with backgrounds in the NFL. And as college football makes this sharp turn, Nebraska's attempting to go along for the ride and structure its program much like what you see at the highest level.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more uniform, right? And I would imagine part of Pat Stewart's job is not only to have an extra set of eyes on players, potential players in the program, things like that, but also try and hone in, and obviously Matt Rule is a huge part of this too. Just as in the NFL, the if you're a good organization, you have the owner, you have the GM, you have the head coach, you have the quarterback, and all those people are involved at various levels of making decisions as well. But I'm thinking about like the top to bottom in what players are paid from a revenue share perspective, and even from an NIL perspective, and sort of how you sort out value on the roster. Like this is, Rule. It doesn't seem like Rule's style, but he's talked about it a lot over the last couple months, like assigning value to players and assigning value to positions. And I would imagine Pat Stewart's going to be a huge help in that category, among other things. It's just another person, in the building. And it's interesting, of course, like you said, Mitch, that there's that really, really, there's that close NFL tie.
Yeah, this is Rule 2.0, remember.
Yep.
It's the Matt Rule who, and we'll talk about this later in the show when we get to Matt Rule's comments that he made on scheduling. It's the Matt Rule that doesn't really care what you think. And
apparently
somewhat different guy than the one who showed up and I think was very aware of a lot of those kind of things. He didn't want to have to be the bad guy who delivered the news that, I'm sorry, there's not going to be room for this player on the roster, or of course we're going to pay all the attention in the world to the in-state or the local high school programs because that's what Nebraska football is all about. We go out and we do that. And now I think the MO has changed to get to a place where it's like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves the best chance to win. And we're going to make all the moves, not just some of them, all of the moves that we feel are necessary to get to that place. And if we step on some toes or hurt some people's feelings along the way, or if we change the way that things have been going that things have gone for Nebraska historically and the way that this school runs its program, well, look around college football. You can choose to stay in the past, or you can move to the future and give yourself an opportunity to win. And I think a lot of that, like you could call it like philosophical shift, has come since all of it, almost all of it has come since Troy Dannon came to Nebraska. And it's been just about a year. We're creeping up on the 1-year anniversary of Trev Albert's shocking departure to Texas A&M. And then just a couple weeks later, Dannon came on board. And I think he's pushed Matt Rule. I think he's pushed Nebraska athletics into a place where it's like, hey, you guys got to get past a lot of this stuff that's been going on here for decades, because look at the way that it's been producing in the win column. Like, let's just go all in on everything that all the big programs and all the money programs are doing, and I'll empower you and I'll give you the resources and just do it. And let's see if we can get that to work. And that seems to be the direction that Nebraska continues to go. And this front office move that was unveiled on Wednesday night is another step in that direction.
It's fascinating, Mitch. Like you sort of just laid out, Nebraska's always been a place where they have felt like, I guess to put it in a kind way, like they've felt like they need to do more with less, right? And it's still like that's a great quality. That's a really, really good quality. But I think now maybe the thought process is, well, we have the ability to do more, and like with more with more. So why don't we try to more? Why don't we do more with more? And I think that is definitely a change and a welcome change. Like I think there's also been a sentiment about Nebraska and how I hear this from fans all the time where they say, hey man, why don't we go get the best X, whatever, defensive backs coach in the country and pay him $3 million to be the defensive backs coach? And the response is like, well, come on, you got to find a way to make the most efficient use out of your money, or whatever the response is. And everybody was kind of just okay with that. Nebraska's spending big time. I think that's absolutely the takeaway from all of this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Stewart, what he gets paid. Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels hired Michael Lombardi, who's another guy that Rule is connected with, just somebody that Rule has looked up to, and I think there's a relationship there between the two of them where they cross paths. But Rule will quote Michael Lombardi or reference Michael Lombardi often. He, NFL guy, and he's going to be the GM at North Carolina. They're paying him $1.5 million. So I don't think that's going to be the salary for Pat Stewart, but I'm interested to see when they get this thing. And they were still working on Wednesday night to get that deal finalized. It hadn't been, completely done. It wasn't completely done, but
agreed to.
Yeah, it's on track for sure.